advancing ideas that perhaps other people aren't advancing. I think the whole area of inquiry into what it is to be human is an open area. I don't think it belongs to a particular group of people like academics. And I think there is a role for making counter-suggestions, for saying, hang on, guys, things may not be quite the way they are, or the way they seem. And what I discovered was that this leads to a furious reaction, as though you've disturbed a hornet's nest amongst the tight-knit academic community who claim to be the sole representatives and interpreters of human history to us, and that they then swarm upon you in fury from all over the world and attack you in every underhand way that they possibly can. So I ended up for quite a while, rather than really advancing new ideas, which I wanted to do, fighting with these incredibly boring guys, and they mainly are guys, you know, and so it becomes a sort of male ego fest, which I really detested. So I actually made a decision in this book, in Supernatural, that I was going to focus on an area that even the mainstream academics agree is truly weird. And that there are very, very strange things about it. And I was then going to go into that area in ways that they themselves did not necessarily go. And so in Supernatural, I don't look at the possibility that there might be 2 million-year-old anatomically modern human beings on the planet. I don't look, as Michael does, at the evidence that there might have been even high technologies in that period. What I look at is an accepted mystery, that there's this extraordinary moment in human prehistory, and no academic will deny it, when a light is switched on, and our ancestors transform their behavior almost literally overnight. And what could have led to that? And I found that there is, even in mainstream academia, there is a growing awareness that there was something very, very odd about this. And I found the work of Professor David Lewis Williams, who's professor of archaeology at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. For 20 years, really from the mid-'80s through until past the year 2000, he conscientiously and vigorously advocated an alternative point of view as to what it was that switched our ancestors on 40-odd thousand years ago. And gradually, because his arguments are so thorough and his field research is so beautifully documented, more and more of the mainstream academic community came round to his point of view. And this point of view, which is central to my argument in Supernatural, I would say now is almost universally accepted by mainstream academics. What they don't accept are the onward implications of that point of view. And to cut a long story short, that point of view is that our ancestors created these extraordinary cave paintings and manifested this amazing quantum leap forward in their overall behavior as beings because they had experienced altered states of consciousness, that they had encountered psychedelic plants, and that they had begun to use these systematically. Their shamans had begun to use them systematically to enter alternative states of consciousness, and that in those states of consciousness they experienced visions and encounters with entities and beings, which they then, when they returned to a normal state of consciousness, depicted. The earliest documents of human history they depicted on the walls of the painted caves, and thus they document their encounters with their beings. Now, this is where thus far and no further do I go with the mainstream academics, because they then stop and say, oh, well, of course the art was majestic, and of course there was a fantastic leap forward in human behavior, but they were just having hallucinations, and there's no real fundamental meaning to this. And where I ended up taking this, because the evidence drove me there, is that these experiences that we call hallucinations in our culture, and that the shamans of hunter-gatherer societies still surviving all around the world call visions, that these visions are not unreal, that they are a retuning of the receiver wavelength of the human brain to allow us to see other realities that surround us and interpenetrate us at all times, but which in a normal, alert, problem-solving state of consciousness we cannot normally access. And In a way, this is a criticism that I have of mainstream science in general, which is that it's very state-specific. Everything that our science does is predicated on the notion that one particular state of human consciousness, the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness that we find useful to function in business and the military and commerce in the modern world, that this is really the only state of consciousness and that there are no other valid states of consciousness. Right. And thus our science refuses to investigate other states of consciousness. In fact, perversely, or perhaps not perversely.
It is very narrow, isn't it?
It's extremely narrow, and actually not only do they not investigate the vast range of human consciousness, not only do they not investigate it, but they've actually, in collaboration with governments, made it pretty much illegal to investigate it. There you may not go, they say. And actually they send you to prison if you do go there. So it becomes very difficult to investigate this. So we have this incredible creature ourselves with a vast range of consciousness, really, truly, truly immense. And we have decided that we are really only interested in a tiny, narrow sliver of that vast range of potential, and that we will focus only on that, and that all our experimental methods and all our so-called scientific approach will be based on the notion that that is the only valid form of human consciousness. And as a result, we rule out almost the entire range of human potential in our investigations. So no wonder, in my opinion, modern science, while achieving great things in the narrow material band, is so screwed up and leads us to so many problems.
Graham, why do we need the mood-altering substances in order to reach that state of consciousness? Why can't we do it without it?
Some of us don't need the mood-altering substances or the consciousness-altering substances, but many of us do. There's a Puritan streak in our society which regards, taking anything, any substance, any plant to change our consciousness as fundamentally wrong. But I think we have to accept that streak is rooted in a particular history and a story of history that we have had, and that it may not be valid. After all, our brains are bioelectrochemical devices. Everything that we experience is experienced through the chemistry of our brains. I mean, go try and have an experience without any neurotransmitters. I guarantee you won't have any. So we can't object in principle to the notion that chemicals and substances are fundamental to how we experience reality. It's just illogical to object to that when we actually look at brain chemistry. Chemicals are fundamental to our experience of reality, and therefore we should hesitate before we automatically, robotically, like automata, accept the Puritan notions that have been stuffed down our throats from the 17th century. We should hesitate before we fully accept those and consider the possibilities that since all our experiences are mediated by neurochemicals, it may be interested to explore the range of experiences by altering the neurochemical balance of the brain, specifically and deliberately, as shamans have done for tens of thousands of years, using plants that have co-evolved with us on this planet. I think we need to rid ourselves of that knee-jerk puritanical reaction, which frankly is not thought through and is not based on any logic. And here's the thing. We are physical beings for sure. My own personal belief is that we are spiritual beings in essence, immersed in a physical form, rather as a man wears a suit. In order to live and survive and thrive in the physical world, we have to be connected to that physical world. It's very important that we understand the laws of physics in this physical realm and that we function. And in fact, our day-to-day survival depends on us being able to function in this physical realm. But the fact that being the case, it leads us to exclude all other kinds of consciousness.
Let's pick it up from there, Graham, when we come right back. Graham Hancock, our special guest tonight. Wow, we'll be back. Well, if you're thinking of something novel as a gift, you might want to consider the After Dark magazine. It's a great magazine, full color. Go to coasttocoastam.com to subscribe or call 1-888-727-5505. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie with Graham Hancock, our special guest tonight. Graham, you also talk in Supernatural about the case of spirits and aliens and fairies, that they could all be one and the same. Tell me about that.
Yes. Well, this is coming to the same thing. In fact, if I could just pick you up for a moment
sure.
on what we were saying.
I'm a little heavy
At the end.